As soon as you're ready, let me know.
Very good.
We're live.
We're live, but I can't see you. I did have it and now I don't. Participants?
I don't see. Oh, here's. Is there one?
Mr. Chair, we're live.
Okay. Call the meeting to order. First order of business is roll call.
Andy Bacon. Is he online?
No, he won't be attending.
Absent. Olin Gambrell.
He just went to.
Olin's here.
Oh,
Goodness.
Eric Curtin.
here.
Tom Silveria. He'll be a late arrival.
Be a later arrival.
James Miller.
Here.
Chris Souza.
Chris is missing.
Absent. David Hontoon.
Here.
And Thomas Heaney. Here.
This is Mr. Gambrell. Okay, second order of business is the adoption of minutes. Everyone should have a copy of our minutes from September 22nd, 2020 in their file. If I can have a motion to accept them as written, unless somebody has an objection.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Motion made. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
They carry. Next order of business is we're going to go through the cases to be continued or withdrawn. Celeste, if we have the attorneys on the line, I'll talk with them, but if not, I'm just going to read what's in the file, if that's okay with everyone. Mr. Heaney, if you just read the address.
Petition of James L. Paradise by his attorney Gerard A. Galvin Esquire for variance at 170 Aquidneck Avenue. And that's also for a special use at 170 Aquidneck Avenue.
Is Mr. Galvin on the phone? Okay, we have a petition in the, a request in the file to continue it until next month, so I'm going to go ahead and carry that over to the 11/24 meeting. Go ahead and read the next one.
Petition of Newport National Real Estate Limited Liability owners by their attorney Robert M. Silva Esquire, 425 Mitchell's Lane.
Is Mr. Silva on the line?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, thank you so much. This is a petition which is in the process of being reviewed by the architect and the designer. So rather than go ahead tonight, we're asking for a simple continuance so the plans can catch up to what we want to do.
Okay, Mr. Silva, we're going to continue that to the 11/24 meeting with your permission.
I would, yes, why not? 11/24 will be fine.
We can talk then. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Petition of John R. Gullison and Bonnie F. Zimble owners by their attorney Jeremiah C. Lynch for a variance and also a special use permit at 59 Aquidneck Avenue.
Mr. Lynch, are you on the line?
I am, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Just to bring you up to speed, last week we filed an amended application for special use permit and dimensional relief. And before Mr. Kane left, he had indicated that he wanted this matter re-advertised. So I'd request that we re-advertise the application. And if you want to make another referral to the TRC, because that was a question that Mr. Kane had as to whether the initial referral was adequate, and then we should be ready at the December meeting.
Okay, so we're gonna refer this to the TRC, and we're gonna put you on for the 11/24/2020 meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch.
And is that going to be advertised again, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Not this month.
Oh, it won't be for 11/24.
No.
Then we're gonna have to carry it to the December meeting.
Okay,
Which
thank you.
is
And what date is that going to be?
Right now, it's scheduled for the 24th,
22nd.
22nd.
December
Are we? Oh,
22nd.
all right, so then what I would recommend, Mr. Chairman, even though it's not going to get heard on November 24th, continue to on 24th. So we keep it on the docket and then can schedule the date so anyone who's following the application can be advised.
Mr. Lynch, it may flow over into January only because we don't normally have a December meeting. Are you comfortable with that?
That's fine, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to keep it on the docket for 11/24, but at that point, we'll probably refer it to the January meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Petition of Sens Corporation owner and GD Middletown West Main Road, limited liability applicant for a variance and special use permit at 0 West Main Road.
Mr. Chairman, this is my application again. We're waiting to get heard before the TRC. We're trying to resolve an easement issue, a sewer easement issue with the town. And the town wants to get that resolved before it will proceed with the TRC review. So if we can continue this to your next meeting.
Okay, we're going to continue to 11/24.
Thank you.
Petition of John and Pamela Wallace owners by their attorneys Chappelle and Chappelle for a special use permit at 819 Quidnick Avenue.
Is Mr. Chappelle on the line?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
We can.
This is Matt Chappelle on behalf of the Wallaces. Not much has changed since the last time we were in front of you guys. We are in the process of getting the development plan review, everything that they need in order to review this petition. The one holdup right now, just so the board and everybody knows, is the landscaping plan that the development plan review has requested. We have hired Quidnick Landworks and are just waiting for them to finish up their plan and stamp it. So that should be the last item they're
Okay,
waiting.
are you comfortable if we continue this to the 11/24 meeting?
I think that should be fine, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we'll see you on the 24th.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is the Planning Board of Appeals. That's still out for calendar, I believe. Is that correct, Mr. Regan?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, there were emails back and forth among council this afternoon, and it appears that everyone, myself, Mr. Martland, Ms. Desatel, and Mr. Jackson are all available on either December 3rd or December 8th.
Okay, let me ask the board, how many of the 5 folks on the board will be available on December 3rd?
That's a Thursday. Yeah, I think so.
It is a Thursday.
About
And what's the other?
8.
8 would be the following Tuesday.
I'm good for the 3rd.
How about you, Mr. Kerr?
Both fine with me.
Third,
Third.
I'm inclined to ask the attorneys to meet on the 3rd if everyone's good with that. Ms. Celeste, is that going to work with you, getting the court report and all that organized?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we're gonna schedule that meeting on the 3rd.
To clarify, then next week is canceled.
That's correct. Right? The 17th would be canceled.
And at what time, Mr. Chairman?
We had originally scheduled it at 6 o'clock, correct?
Yes.
Is everyone comfortable with that, or do you want to go earlier? No. 6 o'clock it is. It's December 3rd, Thursday, December 3rd. Next order of business, we have 2 summary hearings for those on the line. Summary hearings are hearings that require minimum relief. What I'm going to have Mr. Keeney do is read the the petitions. We'll see if anyone online is here to object. If there's anyone online that's objecting to either of the petitions, we'll put them on for full hearing. Otherwise, we will vote on them as a summary uh, decision. So Mr. Heem, take it away.
Summary hearings, first one, petition of Benjamin and Alexandra Ducas, owners, for a variance from sections 603 and 701 to construct 172 square foot mudroom and enclosed porch with a rear yard setback of 43 feet where 50 feet is required. Said real estate is located at 426 Paradise Avenue and identified as Lot 27 on Tax Assessor's Plat 126.
Is there anyone on the line that would like to dispute this or speak?
I have the property owner.
Okay, we don't need him. We just need if anyone's going to vote against it. If there's anyone online that would like to speak against this petition, please raise your hand so that we can identify you. Seeing none, we're going to move on to the next petition. No, we're going to vote on it together.
Okay. Petition of Claudia Cavallero and Vincent Roderick, owners, for a variance from section 603 and 701 to construct a 2,540 square foot single-family dwelling, which includes a 90 square foot front deck and 176 square foot rear deck, resulting in a rear yard setback of 42 feet 2 inches, where 60 feet is required. Said real estate is located at 0 Morrison Avenue and further identified as Lot 33 on Tax Assessor's Plat 120.
Is there anyone online that would like to speak against this petition? Please raise your hand. Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and ask for a motion to accept both petitions as summary hearings. Tom Silvera first. Do I have a second? Second. Ms. Celeste, who's our first alternate? I apologize. Mr. Gambrell, you're voting. Just wanted to make sure we had a quorum. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Mr. Chairman, just in terms of the matters that were being continued, although it wasn't on the agenda as a continuance, my understanding that the two matters involving the YMCA are going to be, it's already at development plan review. So just anyone who happens to be on the line,
Oh, very good.
just so we can maybe formally continue those to the 24th.
If anyone is on the line pursuant to the YMCA, that petition is going to move to the 11/24 meeting. It's in plan review right now. We will not be hearing that this evening.
And now on to the full hearing. First is petition of Beatrice B. Bazarski Trust, owner, for a variance from section 603 and 701 to allow the construction of a 2,698 square foot single-family dwelling with a front yard setback of 20 feet where 40 feet is required. Said real estate is located at 0 Indian Terrace and further identified as Lot 43A on Tax Assessor's Plat 129.
Mr. Curtin is going to recuse himself from this. And Mr. Huntoon, that means you're going to be voting on this.
Okay.
Do we have the attorney? Or the attorney?
We have a motion on Trustee
Hi, good evening, Mr. Chairman and the rest of the board. Also on the line is Jim Hool, who helped prepare the report, I believe was emailed to you today and also passed out. So Jim, are you on the line?
Well, Mr. Bizarski, let me swear you and your son in first. If you can raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony this evening will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your names and addresses for the record.
Jason Bizarski, 3 Green Place, Newport, Rhode Island.
David Bizarski, 59K Boulevard, Newport, Rhode Island.
Mr. Hool, if you're there, can I swear you in at the same time? Raise your right hand, Mr. Hool. Do you swear the testimony tonight will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth? State your name and address for the record.
James Hool, Houle, 198 Union Street, Portsmouth, Rhode Island.
Mr. Holt, you've appeared before this board in your capacity as an expert witness, so we're going to continue that practice.
Thank you.
Mr. Brzezinski, tell us about your petition.
So the issue we have is that we have a 17,990 square foot lot that is 113 and a half feet wide. And so if we take the current zoning requirements of a 60-foot rear setback and a 40-foot front setback, that only leaves us with 13 and a half foot width with which to build a single family house, which is too small given modern requirements for homes. So we're seeking relief to decrease the front setback from 40 feet to 20 feet so that we could build a 33 and a half foot wide house.
Okay. Would you like to have Mr. Wolf make his presentation at this point?
That'd be great.
Thank you. I did indeed go to the property. After I reviewed, I was contacted by Mr. Bizarski, and I reviewed the petition. I looked at the site plan that he had provided me, and then I met Jason Bizarski at the site. We went around the site and walked the neighborhood entirely so that we could get a good feel for what type of an impact this might have on any of the neighboring properties. Now, as Mr. Bizarski said, this is an R40 zone. The rear setback is 60 feet and the sideline setbacks are 30. The front setback is 40 feet. So the lot is less than half the size of the required minimum. It's only 17,990 square feet. And the lot is situated so that it sits long, it's wider than it is deep. So if one looks at taking the 60 feet from the rear and 40 feet from the front, it only leaves about 13 and a half feet in width, so that the building envelope becomes about 60 by 13 and a half. So when we look at it, I think you might have my report in front of you. There's a copy on page 3 of the site plan that shows exactly what I'm talking about in terms of the way the lot is situated and the way the buildable area would be situated on the lot, if following the dimensions, but allowing for that, for the petition of the 20-foot setback from the front. On the same page, I have a copy of the plat map, and you can see better relative to the neighboring properties how this lot actually is situated along Indian Terrace. On the next page, on page 4 on the lot, I roughly approximated where the lot sits. And if you look at Indian Terrace actually splits in half and has an east and a western side. This sits on the eastern side of the eastern part of Indian Terrace. And you can see that it sits long, but you can also see from this aerial that there's really no house that is really very close to the subject. And you can see that on page 5, I included a photograph of the lot, which is just a photograph of the vacant lot. But on page 6, there are street views that show the distance between where the center of this lot is and the nearest property, which is this small cottage across the street from the subject. And that's about the only property that you can really see. The White House that you can see on page 6 in that bottom photograph is actually on Indian Avenue, and it's quite a distance from the subject. So the petitioners are looking for relief from section 603 and 701 only for the front setback. They're requesting 20 feet where 40 feet is required. So after my review of the plan, I felt that it actually met all the standards for the dimensional variance that were sought. So I looked I looked at each of the criteria for relief in this situation. For variance, 1, the hardship from which the applicant seeks relief is due to the unique characteristics of the subject land and not the general characteristics of the surrounding area, which we know we can see that that's true because the lot only has about 45% of the required land area, and it's situated again very wide and not very deep, so that the two biggest setbacks, the front and the rear, create a sandwich problem that only leaves that little bit of area. So it clearly is the unique characteristic of the subject land that's driving this. The hardship is not the result of any prior action of the applicant, and does not result from the desire of the applicant to realize greater financial gain. It's not done for greater financial gain. It's all gain. It's really only to use the lot in a manner that is reasonable, that the granting of the requested variance will not alter the general character of the surrounding area or impair the intent or purpose of the comprehensive plan on which the chapter is based. There's no question this is a by right use. This is a residential zone. The only relief that's being requested is for that front setback. So I think that it certainly is in harmony with the code and the comp plan. The relief is the least relief necessary. Again, it's only the front. The rest of the dimensional setbacks can be met without any problem. In granting the dimensional variance, the hardship will be suffered by the owner as more than a mere inconvenience. I think it's almost impossible to build a really reasonable house that has any type of porch or deck for entry and still make it 13 feet wide. We need some kind of relief for width on this particular situation. I don't see it having any problem. I also looked at it, and quite frankly, in terms of reducing down the request, but if you really need all 20 feet of the request, because even at 10 feet, at a 30-foot setback, you still only have 23 feet. When normal house is at least 24, you need some sort of entry or deck or something to get onto it. So you really need the flexibility of being able to go all 20 feet to the front side, to the front setback. That's actually more of the distance from any of the other properties than it would be if you tried to move it back and ask for rear line relief. It becomes much closer to the house than if you did that. So I think that considering all the criteria, this really is the minimal relief, and I feel that it conforms to all the standards necessary for the relief requested.
Mr. Hall, if this petition is granted, will it change the characteristics of Indian Terrace in any way? Would it change traffic? Would it narrow down that road at all?
I am really sorry. I didn't quite hear all of that. Are you saying, would it change the characteristics of the neighborhood? Is
Not
that
the
what you-
neighborhood of the road. I know there was one abutter that had expressed concern that the road was narrow and this was going to further narrow the road. In your opinion, does granting this relief affect the roadway at all?
No, that was, I had read the letters of objection, so I was very careful to see exactly where the front of, where the roadway is. I mean, the actual width of the road and then where the roadway fits within that width. And where they're definitely measuring the 20-foot setback from the undeveloped part of the road on that side. So no, it's not going to impact at all either the paved roadway or the actual road width that exists there.
Right. And is that roadway owned jointly by all the people that live in the neighborhood?
I believe that it is. I tried to get more information and I wasn't able to, but I believe that it's owned by all the people in the neighborhood right now.
Any other questions for the witness or the petitioner?
As far as the roads are concerned, are there easements required by the other neighbors to get up and down that road, or is that road jointly owned by all the neighbors?
I'm not sure. I think Mr. Bazarski could probably speak to that issue better.
I believe, this is David Bazarski. I believe that Indian Terrace is an easement. And as you enter, it is 10-foot wide. In front of this lot, it is 22 feet wide. So from the beginning or the north side of this lot to the south side of this lot, it is 22 feet wide, and then it reverts back to 10 feet. So the 22-foot width in front of this lot would not be affected at all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bazarski. If there's no other questions from the board, I'm going to open it up to the public to see if anyone would like to comment. Celeste, do we have anyone out there?
Yes, I have someone on Tammy Holden.
Tammy Holden, can you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear the testimony this evening will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Excuse me. It's not Tammy Holden, it's Elizabeth Green.
Okay. Tammy Holden here.
Okay, Elizabeth Green, raise your right hand.
Yes,
Do you swear the testimony this evening will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
yes.
State your name and address for the record.
Elizabeth Green, 40 Indian Terrace.
Okay,
I did send an email. I live on Indian Terrace and I have some concerns about the building. Basically it's road concerns that I have questions about. It is very unclear as to who maintains the easement. And I think that a site, someone needs to go out to the site to clarify who owns the easements, who maintains the easements. We can't get vehicles down. What happened here? Are you there?
yep, we're here.
Okay, so I think that before this goes through, there's some questions that need to be answered. And when they cleared that land there, that lot, there was a lot of vehicles and it did, we were not able to leave the houses further down the street. We weren't able to leave because there were vehicles parked on Indian Terrace, which is a dead end. And we had to get out of the car. We had to get the people off of the site into the cars and to move the vehicles. So I'm also concerned if it does go through, is there anything in place as to where these vehicles are going to be parked when they're doing their work? But I do believe that, the town should go out and view the site. And I think we need to resolve who's responsible for who. I live on Indian Terrace, and I am not sure who is responsible for maintaining some of the easements. We've had trees fall down, and Mr. Bazarski has taken care of those in the past, but before we add another property, I think it is important to clarify some of these issues.
Mr. Regan?
Well, the plan indicates, and perhaps the applicant can provide some further information. Plan indicates that Indian Terrace is a private right-of-way. Whether it is owned by one party or whether it's owned in common by the properties that abut on that right-of-way, I don't know, and I wouldn't know without doing a title search, and that's not something typically that the town would do,
Right.
Since it is a private right-of-way, and the ownership and maintenance of that needs to be handled by the people that live on it and use it. That being said, the board does have the ability to put reasonable conditions on approvals, and if there's concern that the right-of-way not be blocked during construction, the board, if it chose to grant the application, could put conditions on it, such, for example, to making sure that there was no parking or no blocking of the right-of-way during the construction process. But in terms of having the town figure it out, it is a private right-of-way.
Mr. Bazarski, is it reasonable that you can keep the right-of-way clear while you're doing construction?
Yes, absolutely.
And would you be willing to take the bull by the proverbial horns and figure out how we can identify? It really, we can only rule on your property and what goes there, but we understand the neighbor's concerns. So what I'm inclined to do is if I get a motion, and we haven't closed the hearing yet, but if we had a motion that you had to maintain that right of way clear during construction, you wouldn't have a problem agreeing to that?
I would not have a problem with that, no.
And you would help us figure out who owns the property? the
Well,
right-of-way?
that I wouldn't necessarily make that a condition
Okay.
because that's not something that the
We
town
can't
wants to be involved in. That's something that would have to be dealt with among the owners.
I went to I understand the concern. I was there earlier in the week. I looked at the property just to see about the road. And I understand the congestion at the beginning. I certainly understand if there's trucks all over the road, people won't be able to get by. Is there anyone else on the line that would like to speak either for or against the petition?
Chair, there's no other hands raised.
Is there anyone on the committee that would like to ask the petitioner any questions?
Well, I'd like to know, it's Olin Gambrell, who in the past has taken care of or the maintenance of that road?
I honestly don't know that. I know that when I have received a phone call to clear the road from branches or trees, I have done it. I don't know if it's my responsibility or not, but just as a good neighbor, I have always done it. I think it's a situation that everybody just shares to take care of it that lives on Indian Terrace.
It's, you have on all the documentations that this road is private. So it connotes someone owns it or a group of families own it. So do you own it or does the trust own it? Or is the ownership shared amongst all the residents that use that road?
I actually do not know. I don't know who owns the road.
And I think we have to, I think we've identified an issue that doesn't come under our purview. What we can require you to do, Mr. Bazarski, is keep it clear. But I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the road because it's not ours to determine.
Mr. Chairman, I think there's one way that it does apply to us, and it's not the road itself, it's access.
Right.
Because there's 3 other residents that are beyond this proposed building site. And I think it should be clear to everybody that they have a right to use this road before, during, and after construction, and it shouldn't impede their right.
Agreed.
Could I just add one other point, and that is that there are 8 houses or structures on Indian Terrace, and only one complies with the setbacks. When you look at it, you'll see many of the structures are right on the first one that you drive into on the right has a 3.5 foot setback from Indian Terrace. So only one on Indian Terrace, like I say, meets the setback requirements.
Okay, and I think Mr. Brzezowski, this is Tom Heaney, I think we understand that. That was pretty clear, I think, in Mr. Hoole's report. The other question I have is, if you look at your site design, there is a circular driveway that I think is shared by the trust. Is that correct? Where you see that
that has been eliminated.
Okay, so that property now is all going to be on this parcel 43A, and it's not going to be shared with the other parcel.
That's correct.
Okay, good. Thank you for clarifying.
Is there anyone else on the call that would like to speak either for or against the petition?
Mr. Chair, there is no one else. However, this person, Ms. Green, has a hand raised.
Absolutely. Ms. Green,
Yes.
you had your hand raised?
I do think it's important that we figure out who is responsible for maintaining this road, because with all the construction vehicles that will be in and out of that area, right now it is a paved road, which my neighbor Stacy Pecora paid for. She paid for it. It's easements and it's right of ways, but she paid for that road to be put down. And I'm just concerned that with all the construction vehicles, that it will be damaged. And if we don't know who owns it or who's responsible for maintaining it, that's a concern for me. And then we're adding another home on the road, and it's already a complicated issue. So we're just going to complicate it more.
It is, but unfortunately, Ms. Green, that's not our purview to decide how the road's going to be maintained. Mr. Brzezowski is going to maintain the right of way, and I can't speak for him, but if anything is damaged during construction, he's already in the notes that I've read, he's gone out and taken trees down, and he's acted in good faith as a neighbor. So I really think that's an issue between neighbors and not at the zoning board level.
Okay.
I certainly understand your concerns, but we have to vote on the actual petition, which concerns the property.
Okay, as long as I'm assured that I have access to my right of way, I am fine.
And Mrs. Green, that was a question that I wanted you to clear up, is that you are owners on 40 Indian Terrace,
Correct.
and as part of your purchase, you made sure that in your documentation, you have that easement in your paperwork. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I got a question, Mr. Reagan.
Yes, sir.
When a motion's made to approve this petition, can it be attached that any damage done to the road by the petition be fixed?
I wouldn't get into that. I mean, I think once again, that's now getting into an issue between the owners. There are statutes, and those are a private road maintenance statute that was passed fairly recently by the General Assembly that addresses some of those issues. I think certainly if the board wants to put a condition that the right of way will remain clear at all times during construction, then that's appropriate. The idea is that the board has the right to put conditions on to mitigate any potential impact from the project. But in terms of getting into and directing who's going to be responsible for maintaining and paying for the private roadway, that's not something I would advise.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ms. Celeste, is anyone raising their hand?
No, Mr. Chair.
Seeing none, I'm gonna close the public hearing at this point and ask somebody on the board to give me a motion.
Mr. Silvera could speak up. I can't understand him. Into the
I'll make-
microphone, maybe?
I'll make the motion that we grant the petition and that it was with a condition saying that the right-of-way must be left open during the entire time of construction. No construction vehicles are allowed to be parked in it or any obstruction to the right-of-way.
Do I have a second?
Just to be clear, the right of way is to be being opened.
Yes.
I'll second.
Discussion?
I'm gonna vote in favor of this. I believe it's a very deep lot, small lot. It's a lot of private, and I believe that they've done their homework and they make the least amount of house.
I too am going to support the petition. I certainly understand the concern of the neighbors down there. I don't want to see the situation get any worse than it is. And I encourage the neighbors to talk with one another and to figure out some of these issues. But as far as the lot in question, I believe that it's the least relief necessary. They're only asking for a front yard setback, which is 20 feet from the edge of the easement, not from the roadway, which is significant. And I don't think it will have a negative impact once it's built. And as long as the petitioner makes effort to keep it clear at all times during construction, I think that is a good thing. So I too am going to support it. Any other comments from the board? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Bizarre.
And just for the record, the voters on that one was Tom Silvera, Olin Gambrell, David Hontoon, James Miller, and Tom Heaney.
Ms. Celeste, is Mr. Martland on the line?
Yes, I do believe.
Go ahead.
However, this is still
Hello, I'm here.
Okay, let us read the petition, David.
Petition of Thomas and Ella Auchincloss, owners, by their attorney, David P. Martin Esquire, for a special use permit from sections 803A and 1106 to enlarge an existing non-conforming use by constructing a kitchen addition to the main house, which is located in a Zone 1 of the Watershed Protection District. Said real estate is located at 233 Third Beach Road and further identified as lot 149 on Tax Assessor's Plat 125.
Mr. Martland, can you tell us about the petition?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Miller, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, David Martland, on behalf of Thomas and Ella Auchincloss. This property is located on Third Beach Road, 233 Third Beach Road. It's south of the intersection with the Green End Avenue and located on the westerly side. You've probably passed by it many times. It's got a stone wall in front of it and a portion of Paradise Brook along the front edge of the property. So there's the driveway that leads from Third Beach Road into the property, where there is the existing main house with the single-family residence, and then there's a garage with an apartment that's located close to to Third Beach Road. So because it does have two structures on the property, it is deemed to be a non-conforming use, two principal structures, the two residential uses. And therefore, any alteration whatsoever does require a special use permit. Additionally, because of the location of Paradise Brook, this also falls into Zone 1 of the Watershed Protection District. And uses that are permitted either by right or by special use permit, with the exclusion of certain uses, are allowed within the Watershed Protection District, provided the applicant seek and obtain a special use permit. And so we're here today requesting the special use permit for both the Watershed Protection District and the alteration or extension of an existing non-conforming use, meaning the 294 square foot kitchen addition to the main house. The application was sent to both the Conservation Commission and to the Planning Board. Both of those agencies reviewed the petition and provided positive recommendations with the typical type of conditions associated with the Watershed Protection District to maintain and meet the requirements of the Stormwater Management Ordinance, and to make certain that potential sources of pollution are directed away from the property, prohibit use of lawn chemicals, fertilizers, and those types of issues. The types of conditions that this board has placed on a number of residential applications. So the Auchinclosses bought this property approximately 5 years ago. The main house dates back to the 1700s. It's a small single family residence. It has some difficulties in terms of the size, and so what they're looking to do is provide just a little bit more room on that first floor to provide for a better layout with the kitchen. So it's basically a 294 square foot kitchen addition here. I think it's meets all the standards required for a special use permit. The only change to this use is a slightly larger kitchen, right? You've already got a non-conforming use here. It's only a modest increase in the single family residence. I do have with me Lynn Small from Northeast Engineers, who prepared the site plan, and can answer any questions that the board may have regarding the petition. But I thought it was fairly self-evident with the plans and the review that got conducted by the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board, that a small kitchen addition would not, create any, additional significant hazards for the Watershed Protection District.
Mr. Martin, what date were you heard by the Conservation Commission? Because I don't see that in your file.
That was immediately prior to the hearing of the.
It was immediately prior to the planning board, because I remember hearing this petition twice in 2 days.
Okay, good.
So it was Conservation Commission and then the planning board the next night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Regan. Yeah, can we speak with Lynn? Can we
Yes.
swear? Lynn, can you raise your right hand, please?
Yep. I'm raised.
Russ.
I don't have.
Swear the testimony tonight will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
I do.
State your name and address for the record.
Lynn Small, Northeast Engineers, 6 Valley Road, Middletown.
Okay, thank you. Tell us about the project. I guess the only thing that really concerns me is how will they mitigate any damage to the watershed while they're doing construction?
So the project proposes only less than 300 square feet of disturbance to existing areas outside the footprint. All the utilities will be brought from inside the existing house. Access to the site will be through the existing driveways. And, you know, they'll just have the concrete truck over there too. But if you look at the site plan, you can see that we're at the very farthest point of the house to which we can do the addition. It kind of nearly aligns. It actually bumps out a little bit towards the back of the house. So it's as far as they can get basically from the watershed and still be attached to the existing footprint. So we're not expecting there to be any significant disturbance with any vehicles. I think the foundation work will be most significant with the concrete trucks, but it's short work. It should go quick, and then they'll be able to, you know, backfill and everything, build the house from there or the addition from there.
And Len, you'll have to provide, the contractors will have to provide for appropriate stormwater management during the construction, correct? In the nature of silt fences to prevent the silt during excavation from getting into the brook?
Yeah, I mean, we'll be required to have as part of our building permit application, a soil erosion sediment control plan, which will show clearly where your construction entrances are, any stockpile, although like I said, it's such a small addition, they may just truck that right out, and you'll include all of your wattle and your erosion control measures.
Any questions for the petitioner or the engineer? Mr. Martland, since this is in zone 1, if we include the recommendations from the October 19th, 2020 planning board meeting, is your client familiar with that? Will they agree to it?
Yes, and that is the typical requirements of this board on these types of petitions.
Okay, if nobody else on the board would like to either ask the petitioner, the attorney, or the engineer questions, we'll open it up to the public. There is nobody asking questions, so I'm going to close the public hearing and request a motion.
I'll make the motion that we grant the petition.
I'm sorry, Mr. Silvera, but
I'm very sorry. Okay, I'm gonna,
Just make the motion.
okay, all right, making the motion to pass.
And I'll second.
And that includes the recommendation that they follow the planning board, correct?
Right. Yes.
Discussion?
I'm gonna vote in favor of it. I believe that it's such a small addition, that there's a minimal impact to the watershed.
I'm going to vote in favor for the same reasons.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
The voting members were Olin Gambrell, Eric Curtin, Tom Silverio, James Miller, and Tom Healy.
That's correct. Thank you, Ms. Small. Thank you, David Martland.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Corrected petition of Glenn P. Brogan, owner, for a variance from section 603, 701, and 802B to demolish the existing structure and construct a 2,378 square foot single-family dwelling with a left side setback of 8 feet 1 inch and a right side setback of 8 feet where 15 feet is required. Said real estate is located at 75 Tuckerman Avenue and further identified as Lot 114 on Tax Assessor's Plat 116 Northeast.
Mr. Silva, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
I can.
Thank you very much. For the record, Robert M. Silva for the applicant, Glenn Brogan, and I'm with the law firm of Silva, Thomas, Motlin, and Offenberg. I've been asked to represent Mr. Brogan and present this evening's petition, which is one for regulatory variance relief. In doing so, I also have with us tonight J. Nathan Godfrey, a real estate expert who has prepared a real estate report based on the relief being requested. And I believe I forwarded that on to Celeste, and she made that available to the members of the zoning board. Also, I have plans that have been submitted and were prepared by Mark Fontaine, the architect who took the engineering plans from Northeast Engineering and designed the house, which is the subject of the request to be built. The property, which is located at 75 Tuckerman Avenue, is an older home. It's 2 stories, and it's on a lot that is very undersized. It's a little bit less than 5,000 square feet as a lot. I believe it's 4,998 square feet. What Mr. Brogan wishes to do is to remove and demolish that house and build a new home for himself and his family. Currently, the house is, as it exists, is very non-conforming. It violates the front yard setback. It actually only has 19.67 feet from the front lot line where you need 25. And the worst non-conformity is on the south side, the south side yard, where the garage itself has pretty much no setback at all. I think the plan shows it's like 4 inches from the lot line. And then on the north side, the side yard line presently exists to the existing chimney on that side of the house, about 6.7 feet. The proposal and the design by Mr. Fontaine would create a house that would no longer violate the front yard setback. It would have more than the 25 feet. It would be beyond that setback. And he would upgrade the nonconformity considerably on the south side. The house would go from 0.4 feet, 4 inches, up to 8 feet. And then on the north side, the house would remain pretty much the same as it was, but less intrusive. It would be 8.1 feet. So there's been an upgrade of the nonconformity on both side yards, and the house itself would be designed in such a fashion that it would no longer violate the front yard setback. There would still be obviously nonconformity in the side yards. The side yard requirement is 15, but in one instance it goes up from 4 inches to 8 feet, and another situation up to 8 feet. I have a report, as I said, from Mr. Godfrey, and I also have Mr. Fontaine, who is the architect, and if I could present him to describe the constrictions that he worked with in a lot that is only less than 5,000 square feet, and how he designed it to upgrade it entirely. I think he'll testify to the fact that the existing structure now, the single-family home, is 43 feet wide. And once it is rebuilt, according to Mr. Fontaine's design, it'll only be 34 feet wide. So it will narrow itself down and have those setbacks on the north and south side as I've described. If I could, Mr. Chairman, have Mr. Fontaine, who I believe is with us tonight, sworn in so he can testify as to the manner in which he designed this house, taking in the constrictions that he faced with this peculiarly sized lot.
Mr. Fontaine, are you there?
I am.
Raise
And
your-
everybody,
You
can you
swear
hear me okay?
you swear the testimony tonight will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address for the record.
Mark Fontaine, 51 Houston Avenue, Newport, Rhode Island.
May I just qualify, Mr. Fontaine? Would you give a little bit of your background, your certifications, and whether or not you've been involved in zoning matters and testified before other zoning boards in the state of Rhode Island and Newport County?
Sure, no problem. Yeah, I've been designing homes in Newport and surrounding areas for over 35 years, but under 40. I don't have a count, but it's well over 100, probably 200 or 300, I guess, homes. Been around for a while. And I've been involved with several projects in Middletown. In fact, I go back, I think everybody knows Jack Kane. I designed his house 30 years ago out there on Honeyman Homestead Place, that little cul-de-sac. Designed it for Bob Murgo. So I've probably seen my signs around town.
And what are your certifications?
My certifications, I'm a home designer. You referred to me as an architect, but technically my degrees are in mathematics and computer science. And so I've never taken the AIA test, but I've been designing homes for over 3 decades.
Thank you.
My plans include everything that, all structural drawings and all aspects of the requirements for Rhode Island state law.
I believe the committee members have copies of all your plans, the existing condition and the proposed condition as assisted by the design of Northeast Engineering. Will you share with the board the methodology you used and the way in which you designed this home?
Sure. So whenever I approach these things, I was hired by Mr. and Mrs. Brogan to design their home, and they kind of give me a summary or a wish list, if you will, of what they want to get out of the house. And, we went and met at the property, and I took them around and I showed them some of the houses that I have going up around town to get ideas. In this particular lot, they all post their own challenges that you turn into creative opportunity. This one, the challenges, as Mr. Silva mentioned, was the fact that it's under 5,000 square feet in an R10 zone with the R10 setbacks, which only provides a building envelope of 890 square feet for a maximum. If you met all the setbacks, and that puts it under the lot coverage. So taking into account the existing side yard setbacks and the constraints of the zoning side yard setbacks, which would leave a 19-foot 11 structure under 20 feet. I created a structure that basically occupies the buildable area and then popped out those 2 little hyphens that you see on the sides, which basically encompass the stairwells and the bathrooms, because there was no way to get an enjoyable floor plan, a floor plan that would give any type of good design or enjoyable living, because the stairwell in such a small footprint in such a narrow house obstructs and kind of makes it difficult to come up with a good floor plan. So I popped the smallest hyphens off to the sides that I could to create area. One on the north side is predominantly the stairwell. It's the stairwell on the north side of the house, and the one on the left side is bathrooms. So you have a 20-foot wide structure, and their living space runs down the middle. So it's the minimal enjoyability of the lot, really. And the structure, actually, it's not just a reduction and elimination of some of the nonconformity and a reduction in the side yard nonconformity, but it also is a reduction in the amount of square footage that's outside the setback lines. The existing structure has 960 plus feet outside the setback lines, and this structure will only have a total of 180 square feet, 90 on each side. Each little hyphen, the stairwell is 90 square feet, and the bathrooms occupy 90 square feet. So we felt that, that was the minimum that we could do for enjoyability of the space and use of the lot. And here we are presenting that to you. Hopefully, you feel the same way.
Is it your opinion that if you were to observe the zoning setbacks for an R10 zone and try to design a house, that doing so would create more than a mere inconvenience and hardship?
Yeah, for several reasons. Just a 19-foot 11 wide structure is not going to be a very nice house. It's not much wider than a trailer. So you basically have a 2.5 or 3 whatever story trailer with no character. So it's not, when a structure is built like that, they often they don't have any. That's why you end up with these boxes. And sometimes people seek relief. They'll say, okay, I'm only looking for a 2-foot setback or 3-foot setback, and they increase the size of the rectangular box. But it doesn't really help the neighborhood because it's still a box. So it's a lot better to introduce the architectural character the way I did, with small hyphens with a stairwell and the bathrooms, rather than just increase the size of the big rectangle. It's beneficial to the entire neighborhood. I've spoken with the direct abutters, the back and the sides, and they, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, if they're still in the same opinion they were when I spoke with them, are in favor of the building.
Then is it your opinion that the hardship from which Mr. Brogan seeks relief is actually due to the unique characteristics of the subject land or structure, and not as a result of the general characteristics of the surrounding area?
Yes.
And furthermore, is it your opinion that the hardship is not due to a physical or economic disability of the applicant?
That's correct.
And do you have an opinion as to whether or not the hardship is a result of any prior action by the applicant, or does not result from primarily from the desire of the applicant to receive and realize greater financial gain?
No greater financial gain involved.
Okay, and in your opinion, with the granting of this dimensional relief, alter the general character of the surrounding area, or otherwise impair the intent for the purpose of the comprehensive plan which the chapter is based, in your opinion?
No, not improvement, if anything.
And do you believe that the relief as a result of your design, if granted, would be the least relief necessary to allow the full enjoyment of the property?
I do, sir.
Yep. And finally, this dimensional relief, is it your opinion that the hardship that would be suffered by the owner if the dimensional variance is not granted amounts to more than a mere inconvenience?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. If there are any questions from the board, I'm sure Mr. Fontaine will be more than answer them.
Any questions? So just to, this is Tom Heaney, just to clarify a couple of points. There was a lot, obviously, ground we just covered here. But first, we're taking a non-conforming use, and the overall approach is to make that non-conforming use more conforming. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then with that in mind, you've reoriented the building on the existing lot completely. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then as far as the setbacks are concerned, the only two that you need this variance for are, I would guess, your north and your south setback. Is that correct?
It is, and it's complying with the lot coverage and height restrict and every other zoning requirement. It's just the side yard setbacks.
And that was the last question I had was, what is the total size in terms of square foot of this house?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the whole question.
The total size in terms of square foot for the
I
house?
believe it's on the 2,300 and you're talking total square footage living space.
Yes.
That's correct.
2,300 and change. It's on the, I don't have the application here. 23, do you have that, Bob?
2,378 square feet.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then the last thing, you testified to the fact that this house will not alter the general character of the surrounding area. You talked to the neighbors on immediate abutting neighbors, and I see that this house is gonna be almost to the max, the 35-foot max that it can be built at. Are there homes directly abutting or in the near surrounding area that are also built to this 35-foot height?
Yes, I don't have survey data, but yeah, if you stand back, the ridge, because it's really a 2.5-story structure, the third floor is in the roof system. So the peak of the roofs of the surrounding houses are all, and from a massing perspective, are all similar.
Yeah,
Not
that's,
all similar, but there are similar massing in the massing structure.
yeah, that's the exact point that I'm trying to get at, because if you look at your design and your drawings, it looks like a pretty, tall structure just on one dimension that we have here. So I wanted
Yeah.
you
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's not a box like it looks on the page, in 3D. Like I said, that third floor is up in the peak of the roof. It's really a 2.5-story structure. It's sort of like designed attic space.
Okay, good, thank you.
Any other questions for the architect? Mr. Silva, can we hear from Mr. Godfrey?
Yes, if you would swear him in.
Mr. Godfrey, can you raise your right hand?
Yes, sir.
Do you swear the testimony tonight will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address for the record.
My name's Nathan Godfrey. I'm a real estate appraiser and consultant, principal of Newport Appraisal Group. My office is 221 3rd Street in Newport, Rhode Island.
Mr. Godfrey, were you asked by Mr. Brogan to assist in this application and to prepare a written report and an analysis of the neighborhood area and the potential design of this house and the effect on that neighborhood?
I was, yep.
And did you prepare a written report of dated October 22nd, 2020, submitted to me? And that's the report that I have submitted to the zoning board, and they should have be in possession of that written report.
That's the proper date. Yes, sir.
Okay. Would you address your report and testify as to your opinions with respect to the propriety of asking for this side yard dimensional relief and whether or not it meets the standards for variance under the present zoning code of the town of Middletown?
Certainly. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's nice to be with you in any format these days. Everything that I've heard from prior opening remarks and testimony regarding zoning, site, and so forth are all accurate. In addition to the centering of this structure, proposed centering of the structure in the lot, if you turn to page 4 in my report, I also run through my interpretation of comprehensive community plan as it relates to the land use element and how this application stacks up against the specific goals that are laid out in that part of the land comprehensive community plan. And with this plan, it's goal 1 really of the 7 specific goals that we need to concentrate on. And goal 1, to achieve a balanced and harmonious development pattern in Middletown that promotes economic growth and reinvestment while preserving neighborhood integrity, environmental and aesthetic quality, and overall livability. Like I can tell you from my experience, we're going to do a lot of centering on lots. I think it's a good thing. These older, high-density neighborhoods that were developed without the benefit of some zoning oversight, this is what we've got. And if you turn to page 11, there's a map in there. The plat map comes off the Middletown GIS system. And that shows the subject property and the neighborhood. And part of that mapping is a shadow approximation of existing footprints and driveways. And it's pretty easy to tell, looking at that, which properties have been redeveloped because they're centered and which properties are not. So when I look at that as a primary consideration, I think that's what goal one's looking to do. Bring an appropriate neighborhood integrity, an aesthetic quality, and overall livability. Get the building into the middle of the lot to the extent possible. Oh, did I just lose you? We still good? Where'd I go? Where'd you go? You still there for me?
We still hear you.
My screen just went blank. So I think with reflection on the comp plan, the other goals in this element are not applicable. I looked at the other elements. I don't think you have to give them much consideration for this specific application. I believe that this does what your comp plan wants your applicants to do. So I believe it's consistent with the comp plan. With regards to the zoning ordinance, you've got your 5-step test. And as you run through that, I can certainly run through it if you'd like. There's no hardship. There's no hardship from prior action of the applicant. They've done nothing. There's no desire for greater financial gain. When you have these historically platted lots and a conflicting zoning ordinance, maybe not conflicting ordinance, but a set of dimensional regulations that pose these challenges, that's sort of that's sort of something you go and seek relief for. It's certainly unique to be under 5,000 square feet, and certainly not a general characteristic of an R10 district. And I don't believe this is due to any physical or economic disability of the applicant. So we get to the altering the general character. I don't believe a single family use, which is proposed, is anything but the only use for this neighborhood. And we've gone over the comp plan. I believe it's completely consistent with that and the ordinance. And when you can center it on site and put 8-foot side yard setbacks, I believe it's the least relief necessary. And certainly, I don't think we want trailers stacked on top of each other at that dimension. So yeah, this would be more than a mere inconvenience if this were not granted.
Thank you, Mr. Godfrey. Board has any questions, please feel free to ask him.
Any questions for Mr. Godfrey? I guess mine is more than a statement than a question. As I sit up here month over month, we're always negotiating side yard setbacks. And in this case, you know, we don't talk about anything other than the setbacks because everything else is allowed by right. It's allowed by right, right? I can go to 35 feet because that's what the code tells me I can do. But my question is, at some point, we have to, you know, there's no compromise there. It's hey, I'm building what I can, maximize the height. And I go to one of the board members, I'm worried about the massing on the lots. Because I just read the preamble of the code, and the code says that one of the things is that we're supposed to protect light and air movement. And as these houses, I'm not disagreeing that you're not allowed to go to 35 feet. And I don't want to have a discussion whether it's 2.5 or 3 stories. But it is, for all intents and purposes, a much larger home than what's on the lot currently. And I know that you're allowed to go to 35 feet by right. We don't need to have that discussion. But when you come in and tell me you're trading me 4 inches for 8 feet, no, you're not. You're trading me 4 inches for 35 feet in mass plus the existing size of the house. So I don't want to have any ambiguity in that. It's yes, the negative aspect you guys are mitigating, but you're also going up in the size, which is you're right, but you're massing on the lot, which is creating an issue in that neighborhood. And I don't believe there's a lot we can do about it, but I'm just expressing my concern that we talked about, oh, well, we're taking the 4-inch setback and we're changing that. And I agree, that's great. But I think there has to be some concern moving forward that we look at these projects and, you know, does this house need to be 35 feet? You pay an architect to tell us that. I understand that. And that's your job. But, you know, I've seen houses in that neighborhood at 26 feet, at 24 feet. That's not what we're looking at here. None of what I said has anything to do with the petition. I'm just expressing my frustration with the way we negotiate these things. So my question is, did it have to be 35 feet?
Is that directed for me, sir?
Not really, more to the architect, probably.
Yeah, sure, I can answer that. So because the bulk of the house, maybe 85% of the house, the core structure of the house is only 860 square feet. And the goal is to design a 4-bedroom house. There's the, so their family can enjoy the house. For the maximum enjoyability. Sorry?
You have 3 decks on the property. Are they included in the 860 feet?
Yes.
They are all included?
They're all included. The balconies, well, one's a terrace because it's right on the ground. And then there's a balcony or a deck above that. And then there's a smaller balcony above that. So the terrace, that entire back section of the house is part of the square footage.
With overhangs.
Of the living square footage?
Not of the living square footage, but of the lot calculations and setback requirements of the house. And
But the number that you're quoting for living square footage is 2,300 square feet, and it does not include any of those decks. Is that accurate?
That's correct. So
would you agree that covered decks are certainly living space and contribute to the need to go up to 35 feet?
Well, part of the enjoyment of the lot is to have some views and to utilize the yacht from the lot from a views perspective. In other words, if it's not an upside down house, but the living space is actually on the 2nd floor, so that they can enjoy that 2nd floor while they're awake. It doesn't turn into bedrooms.
So the views are important to them.
The views are important because if their bedrooms were up there, it's nighttime, you never get to enjoy them. So that's why the deck is important, and that's why it's not a tiny little deck, because that's their outdoor living space. It's actually was part of the discussion in the design was whether or not to even have the terrace on the downstairs and to utilize that for bedroom squares, because the bedrooms are too small. Mr. Brogan felt, as we're going into this thing, that his bedrooms on the 1st floor might be too small, and we should utilize the back terrace for bedroom space. So, the 2,300 isn't a giant home, but that 2nd floor deck is the outdoor living space because the 2nd floor is their living space, because they want to utilize that. They paid a lot of money for the lot, and part of the reason that lot costs so much is because it has those views, and they'd rather use the views while they're awake rather than for the bedrooms.
I mean, I think we can agree that we're not going to argue views. Is that correct?
Yes, but we're talking about decks, and we're talking about why we would need those decks rather than just living space. because that's their outdoor space. It's a folding door and they can go outside and dine outside or sit outside because that's their living room.
Mark, was I correct when I referenced and said to the board that the existing structure that's there that will be demolished is 43 feet wide, and your proposed design would have a structure of only 34 feet in width?
Yes, it's within inches. It's actually just under 43 feet wide and just under 34 feet wide.
Okay, so the massing of the proposed structure is actually going to be, to the naked eye, less than what's there now.
Yes, I mean, it's actually on paper looks bulky, but those hyphens on the side are very small. They're almost like little towers. You know, they're bathrooms, and if you look at them on the site plan, the core structure, 85–90% of the structure is the buildable area of the lot. And if you didn't have those, it would be a less attractive, it would be, I think, harmful to the neighborhood. When you build a house like that, that's rectangular, like stacked trailers, as one gentleman said, it's not really conducive. It's actually beneficial. And like I said, I talked to the neighbors, and the woman behind the Brogans there actually is a RISD graduate. Maybe I even think she said she might have taught courses there. She's into architecture, design buildings herself, and she was very complimentary about the design. And I believe the other direct abutters on both sides felt the same way.
Okay, well, thank you.
I didn't design this blind like that. I like to talk to people and feel the neighborhood and consult and, see how everybody feels about especially the direct abutters on both sides and in the back.
Thank you.
If nobody on the board has any questions, I'm going to open it up to the public and see if there's anyone that would like to speak for or against.
Here, I have one hand.
Hello?
Hello?
Raise your right hand. You swear the testimony tonight will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address for the record.
Tammy Holden, 62 Tuckerman Avenue, and I'm here with my husband, Christopher Holden.
Okay,
I have my hand up also.
good. Consider yourself both sworn in.
All right.
Okay. Okay, my husband had sent in a couple of emails prior. I don't know if you had the chance to read them.
We have.
Okay. We just have several concerns that were voiced also in the email. The first one that I wanted to have addressed, and I think it was somewhat addressed, is the square footage changed from the first variance notice from 1219 to 2378 square feet. And I'm assuming now that that is the first 2 floors of the property. Is that what we're calling living space and not that 3rd floor?
No, the 3rd floor is all included. That's all the living space. All the heated living space is 2378.
And that includes floor 1, 2, and 3.
Correct.
You had said earlier that was an attic, finished attic.
But
Okay, can I comment on that? What I said was, you can think of it as redesigned attic space, because we were talking about how the plan kind of looks flat. So when I talk about the design, it's not, the massing of the 3rd floor is in the eaves of the building.
right.
So if the house that's there now, if you popped a couple of little dormers on it and put some, and finish that space, that would be like what I'm talking about.
Okay, so the square footage contains that 3rd floor then, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, so it doesn't exceed that. And our concern is obviously the setback that you're looking, that it's being proposed, where it would go from obviously a 20-foot wide house on a 50-foot wide frontage there to 34 feet. That's quite an increase to go from 20 feet to 34. That's about a 70% increase in frontage there. And taking that all up 35 feet high, that's quite an impact.
That's not accurate.
Okay.
the only part of the structure outside the setback that goes up, and it's not 35 feet high, the peak is, are the stairs and the bathrooms. Those hyphens are much smaller than the central massing of the structure.
The
whole- they-
hyphen, I'm sorry, the hyphens on both sides are about 7 feet, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I don't have the exact number. And the one on the north side is actually, the chimney is actually just as it's more obstructing than the hyphen because it's 6.7 feet from the property line. And the
So-
hyphen is 8 feet from the property line. And that
So-
chimney is at least 2.5 stories high.
So
So it's actually less obstructing and less intrusive from the north side perspective than the new structure.
So the hyphens on both sides do not go up to the roof line, the roof of 35 feet on
The
both
peak-
sides of the house?
So the main structure
Mm-hmm,
does not exceed the sideline setbacks, just the hyphens do. And
correct.
when the hyphens get to the third floor,
Yep,
the knee walls are only 4 or 5 feet, and there's a pitched roof on that. So it's not a full wall. That's why I refer to it as a 2.5 story structure, because the peak of the roof may approach just under 35 feet, but the whole structure doesn't go up there. Just the little hyphen. The main structure is in the buildable area of the lot.
yes, I see that. I'm looking at the house plan right now, yes.
When you look
So
at
the chimney, if you put the chimney from the existing structure on and you're looking at the front of that house, it would be more to the right and almost as high as the structure, the peak of that the north side of the house structure. That existing chimney, because it's about 2.5, because chimneys always go higher than the existing structure. It's about 2.5 stories high.
So the front of the house, it goes from, with the hyphens, it goes from, it's going to be 34 feet wide, is that correct? Or 35 feet wide?
Yes, the core center structure is just under 20, and with the hyphens, it's just under 34.
It's under
You
34
go to the maximum width point,
on
yeah,
the 50 foot wide lot, correct?
that's correct.
And the house, the height of the house goes up 35 feet.
It's under 35 feet, but it approaches 35 feet. I believe
It
it's-
approaches 35 feet.
at a width of 34 feet.
At a width of 34 feet.
Yes, but yes, I
So,
see what
yeah.
I see what you're saying, that the hyphens do also go up to the 34.
Yeah. When you look at the front east elevation, it looks like 34 feet at a height of 34.11.
Yeah,
however.
it looks like the whole structure is a big block that goes 35 feet, but
Right.
that's not.
Yes.
We get the hyphens, but
Okay.
it ends up being 34 feet wide, 35 feet high. So anybody looking from the road, it's 34 wide, 35 high, correct?
That's pretty close, yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I want to mention, you had mentioned, well, Mr. Sylvia had mentioned massing earlier, and the existing house being 43 feet wide. Part of that, the width of that includes a breezeway and a garage that is a 1-story garage. And then the house itself is actually maybe at a height of 32 feet. It doesn't go to 35. So the massing of the house being wider, but it also is not as tall. And I think it clearly doesn't, it doesn't show as much of a house as the house that you are proposing. Would you agree or disagree with that?
What are you asking me?
I'm asking you, yeah, it's 40
You're
feet.
asking me if the house is,
The existing house at 43 feet wide, but not at a height of 35 feet. Is,
yeah, it's obvious. Yeah, you're saying that the garage side of the house isn't 35 feet. I think, yeah.
Yes, okay. And so you have 2 hyphens that you refer to as hyphens. One of them would be for stairs, correct? And bathrooms, is that what those are there for?
Yes, because the rectangular shape,
Yes, I get
the
it.
buildable area of the lot doesn't allow for a floor plan that's conducive to enjoyment. It ends up being, and if you widen the structure, like most of often you see it where people widen the entire structure
And they, instead of going a certain number, popping out like a little bit more because the existing structure does in a smaller area. Like the existing structure is 960 square feet outside the setback line. This is only 180 square feet outside the setback line. If you widen the structure less and put a bigger rectangle on the lot, you're going to be a less happy neighbor because it's not going to be a pretty house that you're looking for when you look out and look at your clip views of the cliff walk. It's going to be a big box.
Well, I think that's a matter of opinion.
Okay.
Again.
That's the thing. That's the thinking.
That is the thinking, and that's a matter of opinion. You know, I think we're just in disagreement with it going to 35 feet wide on that size lot that's under 5,000 square feet and going up 35 feet high. There are setbacks, there's, you know, rules and things that we have to abide by. Our area has been looked at repeatedly over the years, and I think that this is an excessive variance request.
Oh, thank you for your input, Mr. and Mrs. Holden.
Thank you.
Clarification.
If I might, Mr. Chairman.
Hold on 1 second, Mr. Silva. Mr. Gambrell has a point to make.
Oh, okay, sorry.
The height to the top of the ridge of the proposed new structure, is that at 34 feet, 6 inches?
That is, hold it here, 34 feet, 6 inches, correct.
So the total height is not 35 feet, it's 34 feet, 6 inches, correct?
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Gambrell. Mr. Silva, you had something to add?
Well, I'd like to just kind of focus the board on the neighborhood itself. With the way in which it was subdivided many, many years ago, the lots are so small that oftentimes anyone who wants to do something with a home, either to build it from ground up or to expand it from the condition that it's in, has to ask for relief. And as a matter of the record, I think the Holtons know about that difficulty, because in November of 1996, they filed a petition with the zoning board seeking the same kind of relief that we're seeking from the provisions to construct a single-family dwelling with a right and left side yard setback of 11 feet where 15 feet is required and a 25-foot by 20-foot detached garage. And they raised the same issues as to the advisability of trying to stuff a house into a small lot like we're facing at this point. And relief was in fact granted, and it indicated that it was to permit the construction of a single-family dwelling with right and left side setbacks less than the required 15 feet and a detached garage. And and it indicated further that the relief is reasonably necessary for the full enjoyment of a permitted use, and insistence on strict compliance with the provisions of the Middletown zoning ordinance would result in something more than a mere inconvenience. And I'm reading from the written decision that was granted unanimously. Bob Corey, Tommy Silveria, Fred Cavallaro, Lucy Lavada, and Paul Rodrigues were members of the board. So we're not asking for anything different at this point in time. And I know opinions can change and taste can be different. There's an old saying that te gustibus non disputante, which means taste cannot be disputed. So I think with the experience that Mr. Fontaine has brought to fore and the design on this very difficult lot, it's less than 5,000, 4,009 and change. He's done a masterful job at producing something that looks nice and is an enhancement to the area. I took a ride, several rides actually, through the site myself, and there is a lot of new construction going on, and the massing is different. The massing is greater than the old homes, but they are done in such a tasteful fashion that the neighborhood is enhanced, not degraded. And I think that's what we have here. Mr. Brogan went to a significant expense and effort to meet with Mr. Fontaine, go over the design, come up with something that made sense and was aesthetically beautiful in the neighborhood area. So I would ask you to take that into consideration as to the degree of the relief that we're asking to put up this nice looking home.
Ms. Silva, I want to just make sure that we've had all the public hearing, all the public input. Is there anyone else? Celeste?
Yeah, the Holdens are on again. I'll unmute them.
Okay.
Hi. Just to comment on what Mr. Sylvia just said. Yes, it's true. We did go for a variance. We asked for 4 feet on each side. So instead of a 20-foot wide house, we asked for a 28-foot wide house at a height of 33 feet. And the lot size is almost twice the size of the lot that we are discussing tonight. So I believe there is reasonable, and then I believe there is excessive.
Thank you, Mr. Holden. We're not going to use that in our weighing anything. Every petition stands on itself. So when lawyers and with other people quote the neighborhood, we have to disregard that, just judge it based on the facts.
All right.
Thank you. Ms. Celeste, is there anyone else with their hand in the air?
No, Mr. Chair, there is not.
Mr. Silva, do you rest your case?
Yes, I kind of made my argument a moment ago, and I apologize. Didn't realize that.
I could, if I could make one last final point, that the direct abutters do like the house, people on both sides and the back, and they would like to see it built.
Thank you. I really would like Mr. Silva to wrap his argument up so we can move forward. So Mr. Silva, you're done?
Yeah, I'm pretty finished with what I had to say. I mean, it's regulatory variance. It's not a use variance.
Thank you.
And we think that it's reasonable and it's the least relief necessary to construct a house of this character.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Silva.
Thank you.
There are no hands in the air. Seeing that there's no further public comment, I'm going to close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
Make a motion to accept the application.
Motion made by Mr. Curtin. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Silvera. Discussion?
As we've all heard, this is Tom Heaney, by the way. This is a very congested area in the town, and we all understand that anytime there's work to be done down there, it is a difficult challenge for the petitioner, and then difficult challenge for the zoning board to weigh the pros and the cons for what is proposed. When I look at this proposal overall, I have to say that I think it's going to be an overall improvement. Even though the discussion has been made and points have been made as far as the building itself is going to be larger than the existing one, I don't see it as being significantly larger. And I do agree that the variance being asked for wasn't a result of what the petitioner is asking for. And then most of all, it's due to the unique characteristics of the land in question. And that's why I'm going to support the request.
Any other comments?
I agree with most of what you said, Tom, but I don't necessarily believe that this is the least relief necessary. So for that reason, I'm going to vote against.
Any other?
Is Mr. Silvera speaking?
I'm sorry, I'll get up to them. I'm tending to lean towards denying it because of the size of the structure and the size of the lot.
Okay. I looked at this and I'm more aligned with Mr. Heaney. I do believe that the lot is a unique characteristic of this issue, that it's a small lot and to enjoy the home. it's least really necessary. They're centering the house on the lot. You can play around all day long and say, well, what if they only ask for 10 feet on each side? That's really not, I don't want to be the person that decides that. So I have to look at the 8 feet that they requested. And where I sit, it looks like it's the minimum relief necessary to build the house. The height, they're allowed 35. So if they're going to 34 and a half, they're within their right to do that. For those reasons, I'm going to support the petition. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
So motion fails 3-2, correct?
That's correct.
Sorry about that.
I just clarify the vote on that. Could you just say who voted A, who voted nay?
I will. Mr. Gambrell, Mr. Miller, and Mr. Heaney voted in the affirmative. Mr. Curtin and Mr. Silvera voted in the negative.
Gentlemen, thank you for your time.
Thank you. The last part of the agenda, Mr. Silva, was the YMCA, but we're referring that.
We have one more, please.
Oh, we have.
There's one more.
Petition of Stephen Faria and Barbara Walton Faria, owners, by their attorney, Robert M. Silver Esquire, for a special use permit from section 803 to allow the expansion of a non-conforming commercial use in a residential district by allowing indoor storage of contractor vehicles and equipment. Said real estate is located at 595 Quidnick Avenue and 39 Newman Road on Tax Assessor's Plat 114 lots 216, 217, and 205A.
Mr. Huntoon, you're going to be sitting in on this one. Mr. Silvera is going to recuse himself from this. Are you there, Dave?
I am. I will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who will be sitting, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Silvera is recusing himself. He has a conflict. So it's going to be Mr. Huntoon voting on this. Mr. Silvera, you're up. I'm sorry. Mr. Silva, you're up.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I've been engaged by Mr. Stephen Faria to represent him in this application. This is an application that's been filed simply to legitimize, if you will, what has been going on at this site and in this location for many, many years. I'll give you a little bit of background. The property is shown on some photos that I submitted. I think you have them. There's one photo that shows the front single-family residence, so to speak, on Aquidneck Avenue. Then it shows the rear residence where Mr. Farrier and his wife live, the 3 garage floors. And then the third one is the location on the site of a commercial garage that's been there for many, many, many years. The property originally was under the control of Green Acre Distributors. And that's the distributorship for beverages that was run by the late Manny Ferrier, Steve's dad. And he began that back in 1955. And I think, and I'm not too sure, that zoning hadn't even been implemented in Middletown, or it was really close. So way back then, Mr. Ferrier was running a commercial operation in an area that today is zoned residential 10. And he has the right to continue to use it for commercial purposes, but only as a non-conforming use. And he has come to me to say that he took over the business back in 1990 and then ultimately bought the property in 1995. And he actually lives in the rear lot which is designated on the tax assessor's plat that I submitted as lot 205A. The two lots in front, 216 and 217. 217 has the original home that the Farriers grew up in, and it's now used and occupied by Mr. Farrier's mother-in-law, I believe. But it also includes the business office for the business in the back lot, 205A, which is the lot that has the commercial building. Mr. Farrier is hoping to be able to legitimize the use. He's getting on in years and he's thinking of retiring, and he'd like to be able to clarify his right to be there and operate a commercial facility in an R10 zone. So the request that we filed is one which is seeking a special use permit that allows the expansion of a non-conforming commercial use, which is what is there today, in a residential district. And the expansion simply deals with the continuation of indoor storage of contractor vehicles and equipment. This, if granted, would legitimize the operation and would take it away from being a non-conforming use. It would give it the right to be, as it has been for many, many years, since 1955, a commercial use, essentially a distribution center for beverages, and also the parking of vehicles that are involved in commercial use as well. So I have, I believe, Mr. Farrier with me tonight, but more in particular, I have Mr. Nate Godfrey, who's prepared a analysis report to support this petition for special use permit. And I trust, Mr. Chairman, that that report has been made available to the.
Speak louder, please.
Yeah, I have submitted a Newport Appraisal Group LLC report of September 21, 2020, which supports the granting of a special use permit. And I would ask that you confirm that that report is made part of the record.
Mr. Silva, Mr. Regan has a question for you before we can.
Mr. Silva, so I understand that there's an existing non-conforming commercial use in that area. Just trying to understand what the applicant is requesting, because you're saying you're asking to legitimatize it or somehow turn it into something other than the non-conforming use. Is there some change in the current use that's being proposed, or some expansion or extension of that to some place on the property where it's not taking place now? Could you clarify exactly what is being proposed here?
Technically, the commercial use up to this point in time has simply been that of a beverage distributorship. And Mr. Farrier would like to be able to accommodate the requests he's received over the years from small contractors who want to park their trucks inside and put materials that they use in the building itself as well.
But so you're asking, so it's going to be a change of use. You're going to add contractors in the warehouse building?
There's going to be no change of use of a distributorship. That will occupy the major portion of the building, but there are some areas left over where cars can be parked and construction materials stored that Mr. Farrier would like to have accommodated with an approval special.
I guess my concern is if we're adding a new commercial use to the property, in addition to the non-conforming distributorship, that you may be running afoul of section 804, which doesn't allow a change of a non-conforming use to something else. So you can request an extension to the non-conforming use, an expansion of the non-conforming use, but I'm not sure that you're in a position to ask for a different use to be added to what's there now.
Well, I don't consider it to be a different use. The use is commercial.
Well, no, commercial is not a use. Commercial is a category. And so if there's one commercial use there now that's non-conforming, you're not allowed to simply change it to any other commercial use, particularly in a residential zone. You gotta live within what Article 8 of the code allows you to do. So, and I know you may not be, if the applicant wants to continue this, so we have an opportunity to discuss this offline and take a look at it, I'm sure the board would accommodate that, but as I'm looking at it right now, it appears that you're adding a new commercial use in addition to the existing non-conforming commercial use, and I'm not, just looking at it tonight, I don't believe that that's allowed by special use permit.
Well, the petition was prepared originally by Mr. Ferrier meeting with Jack Kane, and it was at Mr. Kane's suggestion that in order to allow him to park other vehicles in the building and store other materials, construction materials that are associated, that he'd have to file under the present section of 803 to allow the expansion. So I'm not at all convinced that this isn't the appropriate way of going, but if the solicitor has a difficulty with it, then I think perhaps a continuance to allow him to review things with me would be in order.
So you're asking for us to continue this matter, Mr. Silva?
Well, I'm saying more specifically, I don't have an objection to the solicitor's suggestion that we might want to continue this hearing.
When I reviewed the uses for R10 and R20, I didn't see how we could extend it without changing, for all intents and purposes, changing the zoning on the lot. And that's not within our jurisdiction to do. And when I looked at 804, I was concerned that we were changing the use. So I think in the interest of your client, it may be better to continue it so we can take a look at it and see how it either fits or it doesn't fit.
Yeah. Very well. I'm amenable to that. I have one personal issue that creates some problems. There's only one zoning meeting left in the month of November, and that's, I believe, on the 24th.
22nd.
That's correct.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that gives me enough time to deal with the issue with the solicitor, but in any event, we should put it over to the 24th, and if we can't resolve it on the 24th, then I have a bit of an issue because I'm scheduled for some rather extensive surgery on my neck on December the 1st, so I wouldn't be around for the December meeting. We might have to continue it beyond December.
We're going to continue it then to the 24th, holding Mr. Hanson in to act on it, and Tommy's recused himself. So I think that would be best. Do we need a motion for that? We can just do that.
You just do that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Silva.
Yeah, I didn't quite get, Mr. Chairman, what your remark.
We continued it to the 24th.
Okay, all right, fine. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last thing on the docket, Mr. Silva, was the YMCA, but that's been continued pending design plan review.
Yeah, that was continued for hearing on the 24th.
That's correct.
Yeah. We are before the planning board on, I think, the second or third Wednesday of the month before the 24th, the 18th. So hopefully be able to accomplish the review by the planning board and be in a position to proceed with the hearing on the 24th.
Thank you, Mr. Silva.
Yeah, thank you.
That concludes our agenda. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Mr. Gambrell. Do I have a second? Second by Eric. This meeting is closed.